right. So aside being the CEO of the Nigerian Center, we see that you've also written a few books. We're going to get on one today, and we'll hope to have you back in the future to touch on the other books. In front of me, we have Borderless Voice. How long did it take for you to write this book in terms of being an author? Was it a couple years, a couple months? How long did it take?
Well, as a first-time author, the real answer is a lifetime.
Wow.
Because the moment you come to the point that you want to write a book, is a summary, especially if it's we call it a business memoir, which is autobiographical, but also you speak on a perspective, a professional point of view to a subject matter area. And that happens over a lifetime. This particular book, it became relatively quick when I started writing it and finishing it. I think the process was about maybe 3 months or so, but in terms of the content of the book, that happens over a lifetime.
All right. The title, Borderless Voice, is very strong. Why that title in terms of what the book has to offer?
Two events kind of inspired that title. I believe it was 1999, around 1999-2000. There was a Miss World Beauty pageant in South Africa. And for the very first time, there was a young 19-year-old, Gbenga Ogunjimi, who became Miss World from Nigeria. Typically, our community is now seen as the definition of beauty, but she broke that mold. And not only was she the winner of the Miss World, she redefined what beauty was. She found and expressed a borderless voice.
Wow.
The second incident or event happened in London. It was the TED Talk. It was a TED Talk global event. And a young Nigerian woman came to the platform by the name of Ngozi Chimamanda.
Right.
And I remember I was watching this show, and I saw this young Nigerian woman, in a Nigerianness, in authority,
right.
in a mastery, and this woman is expressing a borderless voice. So she broke all those barriers. So the real message of this book is that your country of birth or the culture that you identify with or your last name or where you're from should not impact how far you can release and unleash your authority into the world. And that happens with the practice of taking ownership of your own story. Once you do that, you find and express a borderless voice. I think that's what inspired the title.
Okay. Based off of knowing more about this book, identity seems to be a huge topic. Why is that? Why does someone's identity play such a huge role in their outlook on life?
Because the reason why your identity is important and is a big deal is because that if you think at every facet of identity, whether it is your cultural identity, whether it is your spiritual identity, whether it is your professional identity, whether it's your gender identity, we are the authority of that, in the sense that I don't hold your participation for me to tell myself how I feel about myself. That is my self-perception. Particularly in this book, why identity is important is I focus a little bit more on international identity, which is an aspect that is rarely talked about when it comes to in the identity world, is this idea of how do you see yourself outside of the country or community that you were born into. And the story behind that was that I was coming back into the United States at the Atlanta International Airport. And at that moment, I had a defining moment. And if you're an immigrant, when you get to the immigration, in my community, we call it let my people go language. You know exactly what to tell them.
Right.
There's a script you gotta stick to. You're coming to see your cousin, your in-law, a conference, you stick to the script, you get in, you do your business, and you get out.
Right.
And this moment, I decided to break the script. I told the immigration and custom officer that I was coming back to start and continue to run a business. I said, you mean you're working in the United States? I said, yes. And they put me for a secondary screening. First, they said that I'm going to deny your entry into the United States. So yeah, I was facing deportation.
Wow.
And I had flashes like the implication of that how am I going to explain this in any country in the world that you're deported from America?
Right.
It's going to be like a stigma that's going to go with me for the rest of my life. But you know what? I've been in America for a few years. I know what it means to speak to a manager. I said, is this possible? I speak to someone else. He said, sure, you can. And I was escorted into this waiting room. And one by one, I saw a lot of people who was denied. They were put on the next flight.
Wow.
They would not come into America. They would not see the land of opportunity. And it was my turn. I was faced with this decision. And when I show up and they called my name from the speakerphones, I knew they'd reached a decision because a non-Nigerian or American cannot say the GB sound, which is Gbenga.
Right.
If you say Gbenga, you're from Nigeria, you're born in Nigeria. For the first time in my entire life, I heard an American accent say the GB sound, and it was Gbenga Ogunjimi. I knew this was a moment of decision. So I showed up, and they gave another opportunity to really explain what I meant. I said, hey, I'm coming to this environment to create opportunities, and I see myself as an international entrepreneur. Because if you think about it, there was a woman at the Guardian newspaper who published a piece. She said, how come white people go overseas and are expats, but the rest of us go overseas and are immigrants?
That's true.
When we have the same skill set. So they did the investigation. They came back to me and they said, your story checks out. We're issuing you an advisory to become a permanent resident. And this is the path that you would go. And they gave me the pathway, which is the extraordinary ability in business, which I did not know. And the idea behind that story is this idea that I took authority of my own identity.
Right.
It was challenging. There was stakes. The stakes were very high to do so, but that revealed a whole world of opportunities, and that created this borderless voice. So that is the message of this book, that once you take on the authority of your identity, of telling your story, you create a whole world of opportunities for yourself.
That's very interesting that you say that. The reason why I say that is because I feel like identity is something that everyone struggles with.
Yeah.
Trying to shape it, trying to fit someone else's mold, trying to break stereotypes. I'm guessing those are topics in the book, correct? Okay, so if people continue to have opportunities to correct their identity, what is something this book can help them with? What is something that this book can give them to help them better understand their identity and their story?
I think one of the tools you're going to get from this book is this idea that your identity is the way you see yourself. Your brand is the way I see you. You have the responsibility over every aspect of your life. Your self-perception is for you alone to decide. But not only that, you now have the opportunity to actually shape and have authority over your brand identity, controlling the way you see yourself and the way I see you. And everybody leave that to the world to determine that for them. And the reality is, whether you're intentional or not, there's a version of your story out there. Whether you're telling it or not, there's a version of your brand perception out there. But you telling your story and taking authority of your identity is you taking control over that messaging, over that narrative, and say, this is the way I want to be seen. This is the way I want to be addressed. This is the way I want to be perceived. And you can shape that. So I think this book gives you the tools to do that. It also lets you know that the greatest barrier or border in the world, it is not financial, it is not technological, it is not cultural, it's your self-perception, it's the way you see yourself. And this book helps you with the language, helps you with the tools to really elevate your brand authority. And all of that happens by the way you see yourself. And I think it's a mixed opportunity because we allow voices to shape and dictate that. But this book is gaining control over that aspect of your life.
Wow. Okay, because I read a lot myself. And when I read books, I like to take something away, hopefully more than one thing. But in reading this book, what is something you hope people take away? What is something you hope people take away and maybe share with another person, or have some sort of epiphany or relief from?
Is this idea that everyone has a story to tell. And in my line of work, and I've done storytelling consulting, I've helped congressmen design their comm strategy. I've worked with people who are returning from prison, who are returning citizens. I've done Fortune 500 weigh in on their marketing strategy.
Wow.
The idea is, the commonality is, whether it's a CEO of a corporation or whether it's an aspiring entrepreneur or someone who just got released from the prison criminal justice system, everyone has a story to tell. And everyone's story is unique, is your superpower. Like, once you understand that you don't have to keep discounting your story, that in itself puts you in a league all by yourself. It puts you in a world where you have no competition because no one else can have your story. And this book allows you to tell your story in a most authentic way, in a most compelling way that really celebrate and shine a light on your brand authority. And I think that skill is a leadership skill, is a missing component to a lot of people's toolkit. This book gives you the tool to be able to do that. In my coaching consulting practice, I spotlight the stories of the people I've worked with, many of them who have been able to defy unimaginable odds, but the pivotal moment, the transformation happened for them when they say, hey, I have a story to tell. And I think telling that story, honestly, is a pathway for creating wealth. Because if you look at your life story, it's a wealth creation blueprint. And this is what this book tells you, how to mine that and how to monetize that.
Wow, that's deep. And I'm so glad that we have books like this. And in our platform, we want to highlight books like this so that people can get whatever type of assistance or help they need in the form of knowledge, especially in the book form. Thank you. So thank you so much for joining us with this interview. CEO of the Nigerian Center, everyone. Here he is. In case you've been Googling or want to research. Is there anything else you want us to tell the viewers, or anything you want to share with the viewers regarding the Nigerian Center or the book here, Borderless Voice?
Yes. On the 24th of February, Nigerian Center led a coalition of 128 organizations in the United States, humanitarian rights groups, human rights, immigrants' rights, educational culture organizations, and we petitioned the Biden administration to immediately designate and grant Nigeria TPS, which is temporary protected status. And what that means is that it's going to protect undocumented Nigerians in the United States. And the benefit of that is that anyone who is currently in any form of incarceration or immigration detention would be released. Anyone who is in removal proceedings, they have a court date, will be canceled. Anyone who is undocumented, don't have a pathway forward, or don't have a work authorization, would be issued one. Because we are asking the State Department, the Biden administration, to recognize the conditions in Nigeria. Folks should not be deported at this time. We want folks to be aware of that particular campaign going on and how they can participate. You can get more information on our website, nigeriancenter.org/TPS, gives you more information. Folks in the U.S. can call their congressmen or women to weigh into this legislation, to weigh into this campaign, so we can have this protection for folks.
Thank you for that. And we're going to send this information out, and we're going to show that out to everyone as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.